Welcome to our presentation on why did the Rape of Nanking happen. The Rape of Nanking occurred in December 1937 when the Japanese Imperial Army marched into the Chinese city of Nanking. They occupied the city for around 16 weeks, killing about half of the citizens. It is thought that the Japanese army killed around 300,000 of the 600,000 citizens. The Japanese army looted, murdered, and raped the citizens of this city.
A long history of contact with China. Whether it is the adaptation of religion or economic values, Japan has been sharing similarities with China dating back to the Han Dynasty. Since then, Japan has had several conflicts with China during the Qing era and during the Manchurian rule.
Prior to invading and capturing Nanking, both the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan had been involved in the Second Sino-Japanese War. The cause of this war was when China began resisting the expansion of Japanese influence within their territory. The Second Sino-Japanese War began on July 7, 1937, which meant China and Japan had only been at war for 5 months when Japan captured the city of Nanking. The image on the slide shows the amount of territory that the Japanese had expanded to. The purple is where they had controlled in 1941, and near the bottom of the purple section you can see the city of Nanking, also known as Nanjing.
There were little to no resistance to the Japanese occupation and massacring of the city of Nanking. The Chinese nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek ordered most of the army to leave the city in fear of losing to the Japanese forces, while leaving the untrained auxiliary troops behind to defend the city, while also forbidding citizens to leave the city. The rich and the middle class had ignored the order and left the city as soon as possible, leaving the rest of the population to face the incoming attack. The Nanking Safety Zone was created by the International Committee to be a neutral ground and a refugee center in the middle of the city. Afterwards, the government had left on December 1st, 1937, and made Beijing the capital of China while ordering the remaining citizens to stay in the Nanking Safety Zone for their own protection.
Back in 1937, foreigners played a huge role in Nanking by forming an international committee. This group helped manage the safety zone and was responsible for saving many people under the leadership of John Rabe. Eventually, the committee was renamed as the Nanking International Relief Committee.
On December 13, 1937, Japanese soldiers had arrived to the city of Nanking to face a weak and unorganized Chinese army. 90,000 Chinese soldiers had surrendered to the Japanese forces, which sent them to POW camps. The Japanese had sent the POWs to the outskirts of the cities to be beheaded, buried alive, burned alive, and used as target practices for soldiers. After dealing with the Chinese army, the Japanese turned their focus to the citizens of Nanking, and the Japanese soldiers ended up raping over 20,000 women and children with the age range of above 70 to as young as 8 years old. Pregnant women were not excused as they were also raped. Japanese soldiers had killed shopkeepers, looted their stores, and then burned them down with their family members inside. Japanese forces would also kill random people in the middle of the street, including people who were in the Nanking safety zone. Soldiers would also take groups of civilians to the outskirts of the city to dig their own graves.
These 3 images show how destructive and controlling the Japanese army was in the city of Nanking. The image on the left was taken a day after the Japanese took over Nanking. The cars in the image are infantrymen patrolling the building that had previously housed the finance ministry of the Republic of China's government. The middle image shows the amount of destruction that the Japanese did to the city. This image was taken following the Japanese attack on January 4, 1938. The image on the right was taken following the initial Japanese assault on the city. They left the dead Nanking citizens on the streets.
While dealing While dealing with the aftermath of the Rape of the Nanking, people were wondering why the Japanese were so aggressive with their attack. Some of it has to do with the Japanese ideology of war and surrendering to the enemy, hailing from the samurai. The ideology is called Bushido, the samurai code of honor. Bushido is the samurai's ideology of dying for their lords. One of the codes is do not live in shame as a prisoner, die and leave no ignominious crime, which means it's better to die in combat than to be captured by the enemy, and this ideology is instilled into the Japanese at a very young age. This causes Japanese POW camps to be in horrible condition because they believe that a prisoner that has been captured by the enemy has dishonored their country by not fighting to the death. They also use prisoners as a teaching lesson to the Japanese soldiers to not get captured. In the eyes of the Japanese soldiers, the 90,000 Chinese soldiers that had surrendered to them had dishonored their countries and their uniforms by not fighting to the death.
After the war, the Potsdam Declaration was declared on July 26, 1945. Once the Japanese government agreed to this declaration, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, also known as the Tokyo War Crimes Trial, was formed. As seen in this photo, there were 11 justices from various countries appointed to the IMTFE. The trial began on April 29, 1946, and lasted for almost 3 years. The top Japanese military officials leading the troops in Nanking were put on trial for their crimes, including General Iwani Matsui and General Hisoi Tani. Matsui was the commander-in-chief of the China Central Area Army and the leading defendant in the trial. He is known for having killing contests of Chinese soldiers. Testimonials were a key factor in the trial. The trial contained testimony from 419 witnesses and affidavits from 779 other individuals. Witnesses would tell their stories on the atrocious acts committed by the Japanese soldiers, which left citizens shocked. The verdict from the tribunal was made on November 12, 1948, and set Matsui and Hirota, along with 5 other convicted Class A war criminals, to death by hanging. 18 others received lesser sentences. Many people questioned the morality of the judges and their decisions, and it was later discovered that the American government did not prosecute many Japanese officials in exchange for their research on bacteriological weapons. However, Japan still accepted all punishments made from the verdict. In total, China held 13 tribunals, tried 650 cases, convicted 504 Japanese, and sentenced 149 to death. In conclusion, the Rape of Nanking was one of the most immoral events in history. Although it is not as well known to the Western world, it still shapes foreign policy today. The city of Nanking was left in shambles and took years to recover. It was ditched as the capital of China and replaced by Beijing. It is estimated that around 300,000 lives were lost and that between 200,000 and 800,000 women were raped.